Hello, everyone. I'm back. Yes, I know it's been a long time. I will talk about a little bit, if you are interested, and stick around to the end of this Selena Gomez EP review. I'm going to share a little bit more of my, reasoning behind taking some time off from YouTube. I just felt as though I wanted to address it for those who are interested and who care to know. But yes, I am back. You might be a little surprised to see me returning after quite a bit of an absence to cover a Selena Gomez EP. And I was really debating on filming this video in the first place, I've got to be honest with you. I ultimately just felt like there was enough to talk about, and I really just actually couldn't wait to sit down and film a video again. It had been so long. That's part of the reason why I wanted to take the hiatus in the first place. It's good to have that feeling again. But admittedly, if you follow my channel, Selena Gomez is an artist who I have reviewed before. I've reviewed Revival, which was, some consider her debut, even though it was like an album she released after releasing many others, part of Disney Records. But then I also reviewed her last album, Rare, which came out early in 2020. And now we have this 7-song EP, and it is her first Spanish project, something that Selena has actually talked about wanting to do for quite a long time. If you recall, she released a song in Spanish. Well, it was a cover of her song, Who Says, which was a big single off of her album, When the Sun Goes Down, back in 2011, called Diches. I think I'm pronouncing that right. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not the best at pronouncing Spanish words. I'm going to try my best, but it's not going to be on the mark. So I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these titles. I don't know a lot of Spanish, admittedly, and my pronunciation, it's a struggle. But that was sort of a taste of that, and then she hasn't actually sung in Spanish since then, but she's talked about doing it for a long time. So this project definitely seems like something she's just been itching to do, and it was just like, creatively, it was very freeing for her. It was a chance for her to experiment in the studio and just let loose a little bit. Not that she hasn't done that in the past. Now, I'll preface this video by saying this is not going to be a super in-depth analysis on the lyrical content or even on the songs themselves. It's going to be a briefer review because it's a 7-song EP, and also because it's Selena Gomez, and I'm not going to use this as a knock or a way to diss her, but, I'm not expecting anything earth-shatteringly deep here. This is a vibe record. This is a fun, as we edge towards the warmer months, tropical-infused party record. I'm impressed with it. I'll be honest, for what it is, I had pretty low expectations. She's done several kind of, and I was wrong, she has sung in Spanish before. I believe she sang in Spanish on the DJ Snake collaboration Taki Taki, which I think had Cardi B on it as well. And Ozuna, I'm not quite sure if I recall. There was a bunch of people on that one. And then she did another song with Taney, who is actually one of the producers on this record, along with DJ Snake. There's a bunch of producers in the fray here, but there's some of the big names. She had flirted with reggaeton before in her music, and then she had flirted with singing in Spanish on those collabs. So this is not entirely new territory anyway for her. And she's very well suited for it. What she gives us here is like I said, very smooth, easy listening, reggaeton, trap-inspired, simplistic, but well-produced and slick, tropical, flavorful mix of fun dance songs. And there's a real Latina feel to her delivery. And there's something about Selena's music. I've seen it in all of her albums, even, especially her solo ones after she left the scene. Because then back then it was Disney, so she was trying to be a little bit more of she was trying to be a little bit more rock and roll just to kind of fit that aesthetic, similar to like Demi Lovato and Miley, they had that. But she's completely embraced her Latina heritage, so she's really trying to embody, the dance. It's very clear that that's her direction, and she's been wanting to take it in that direction with the production and the people she works with, because it's a similar structure for beat that is very Spanish, it's very Latin, and it really gives that flavor that I think just makes these songs so undeniable. There's a really great Spacey reverb aspect to the production. That's not anything I was surprised to see on any of these tracks. And like I said, because they are in Spanish, I'm unfortunately not really going to dive too much into the lyrical content. I will just a little bit on a few highlight songs that I really enjoy. De Una Vez, which is the first track and was the first song we heard off of this project, sounds like the most personal. It's the one song that you could almost consider to be a ballad. And it's got its own sort of more introspective energy to it compared to the other ones. One time, or the first time, but I'm not entirely sure, so I will correct me if I'm wrong. It translates to at once, so I wasn't quite right with that. It doesn't hurt like before, no, the wound of your love healed. Once and for all, I'm stronger alone, and I do not regret the past. I know that the time by your side cut my wings, and now this chest is bulletproof. In the video, you get this feeling of like the chrysalis to butterfly transformation, being freed from being tied to a relationship, feeling as though you can really feel yourself in your full embodiment and having no regrets, getting a sense of clarity. And I think that comes across in the song. You know, it's transcendent in that way. It kind of lifts itself up a little bit, but it's got a folky sound to it. It reminds me of Nelly Furtado a little bit when she was sort of flirting with doing Spanish Latin songs, but that had a folk tinge to them. It's like a backyard sort of vibe. I don't know, backyard garden, tropical plants vibe. It gives that aesthetic that I think is so distinctly, you know, what she's going for with the Mexican infused sound and sensibility. Now, I want to just say, you know, people criticize Selena for relying heavily on auto-tune and also for having, well, she has a lower register, so her voice is deeper and it doesn't quite have the same range. It doesn't have quite the same dynamism. So a lot of these songs play with that a little bit more. She's worked, I think, a little bit more to her strength with that on this project and her last project, Rare. And so we get a lot of these sort of like mid-tempo, but also mid-range note songs. And they don't really go very far in terms of the dynamics, but it works for the rhythm she's trying to give up. It's sensual because she's sort of like sometimes not really singing, but then at the same time, there's these inflections that come through. And here's what I will say about that, because you might think I'm holding her to a slightly higher standard than I would other pop stars who I do not really regard as necessarily, I mean, this is shade, but I mean, let's be real. I cover, you know, singer-songwriters, people who really pour their heart and their sleeve on these songs and maybe sing a lot more live instrumentation and stuff like that. I give her a pass for a lot of this stuff because I really do think that there is a place for a commercial product like what Selena gives us that can just be really fun, flirty, sensual, rhythmic, danceable. I don't really see anything wrong with that. It sounds really melodic and soothing. And at the end of the day, I don't really care how we got to that point, how we got there when it comes to Selena's music. Like I said, my expectations were not crazy high. So on a lot of these songs, we have a similar sounding vibe surrounding it. And we do have, you know, characteristics of production that you would get in more reggaeton Latin trap songs. You know, artists that, you know, have been really making headwaves in the radios, even in the United States in recent years. So it's hopping on that trend. But again, I don't feel like Selena is capitalizing off of a trend that she cannot move and maneuver within effortlessly. I think that Selena was made to make this kind of music, to be completely honest with you. I think when she tries to like make a really powerful ballad that showcases vocal range, and it's like a little bit more stripped back and there's not as much glossy production on it, I hate to say it, but I feel like that's where the cracks start to show with her artistry. I know Selena wants to do that. I actually was also wanting to talk about in this review, the Vogue interview that she made. I just wanted to briefly touch on it because she talks about feeling as though she feels pressured to not make music because people aren't responding to it the way she feels innately that the music is. I don't necessarily say that she feels like she deserves, but she was a bit disappointed by the response to songs like Lose You to Love Me, for example, which she thinks of as her most personal work. You know, the criticism, first of all, you got to take it on the shoulder. So, I mean, I understand where Selena's coming from, but at the same time, she talks about how she just makes music for her fans. Specifically with this project, I mean, this is a love letter to her fans, if anything. I mean, it'll get her streams and it'll do well, I think, in this climate. The closing track, Selfish Love, shout out to that one. If that song is not a huge hit this summer, I don't know what's going wrong with this pop industry because, you know, Selfish Love has all the makings of the next, you know, big tacky tile style song, even though that song actually really did flop. It did not become the big hit that I think DJ Snake expected it to. But, you know, I'm not even a huge DJ Snake fan or any of these like kind of producers that, you know, have maybe that kind of vibe. But Selfish Love is so sensual. I am just loving the vibe. It's got the Caribbean flavors. And it's got the rich texture of the production. It's got this deep, sensual guitar riff that's reverbed out and so elegantly strung across the melody. Something I think also very well reflected in the album art is the elegance in which the production, which is so slick, matches the very feminine and soft Latina delivery of Selena that at the same time is feminine and soft, but has a very commanding rhythmic power to it. So it's a bit like a mantra, the way she runs around these notes and the way she runs through these verses. And it's repetitive, but it's meant to get into your skin and in your ear. And really great Latin artists, I think, have a real knack for that. And that's one of the reasons why I've always have an ear for dance hall, tropical house stuff. And she's really kind of leaning into that here. So I was really happy to see that. Baila Conmigo, which is a collaboration with Raul Alejandro. I'm assuming Baila Conmigo means dance with me. Am I correct? Let me double check on that. Yep. I know some Spanish. And with the Puerto Rican singer, she really parrots off of him really beautifully. And they use their, way of leaning into that baila, baila, baila conmigo. Like it has such a rhythm to it. It sits really well within the melody. So I'm totally on board with these tracks. Another highlight for me is Vicio. I believe that's a translation for vice. So your lips are my vice. I'd risk it all for one of your kisses, and your heart beats with mine. It's the perfect tempo. Kiss to kiss, I realize I need you just like yesterday. I want to have you just as you are. And then she repeats in the chorus, your lips are my vice. Your lips are my vice. And the tempo really builds on this one. And she really, it switches it up from what you would assume might be a little bit more of a ballad. She really rides it in a very seductive manner. And I'm really in love with the power of this track. I love the note fluctuation on Buscando Amor. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. In verse 2, she sings, who doesn't like a Latina dancing to reggaeton? So, you know what? Perfectly summarizes exactly how she is alluring the listener with these very hypnotic trap dancehall tracks. So that's all I really have to say. Like I said, just the expectations were met, and it was a fun product. And I'm really interested to see, because Selena sounds like she has at least one more album in her that she wants to make before she potentially could retire from music. That's what she sort of alluded to in that interview, which has gotten a lot of fans understandably upset. And so I see where she's coming from. I think that acting is something she's always been a little bit more inclined to want to pursue, but she also had such a love of music. And so I view her much more as, someone who is, all heavy gloss in the studio and not so much performing live. But I think that there's still space for that. And I don't want to see her be completely disillusioned with continuing to make music, because I think that her sound and her style, I don't know, it's just really fresh and I really enjoy it. So I like the feminine, sensual energy that she brings that's understated. It's not like aggressively in your face. She's not a very aggressive singer, and her songs don't have a lot of aggressive production. I suppose Adios would be my least favorite, just because they go a little too wild with the productions, like a little bit more electronic inflections in there. It's experimental. So those are my thoughts. Again, it's a little bit of a just put that out there kind of video. What I wanted to do is just kind of get back into the swing of making videos. And like I said, I wasn't necessarily planning on filming a video for this, but the timing of it, I've got a lot of videos that I plan on making now in the next month. For one, Eurovision, we are in the thick of it now. We have almost all of the Eurovision 2021 songs. So anyone who is interested in Eurovision and been wondering if I'm going to make videos about that, it's coming as soon as this week. I might even have my first video about it. Obviously last year I covered every song individually, and that was just, I was way in over my head with that. It made me loathe doing these kinds of videos. I'll be completely honest with you. It's one of the reasons why I fell out of love with doing this last year. So I'm trying to sort of take a space away, and then with Eurovision, I want to cover it, but I'm going to do it a lot more in a tightly, wrapped package when it's all out there. So what I plan on doing is 1 or 2 videos where I talk about every song in alphabetical order, and then I'll put out a video with my rankings, but I won't be in that. It'll be just the videos, the little clips. So that'll be coming, and then we've got several other albums coming out this month that I want to cover. And moving forward, yeah, you won't see as much of me covering, you know, there's a lot of artists that I was covering that I'm not covering so much today. And that's because I'm getting a little bit more focused on certain artists, just because I want to focus on artists I really want to talk about. I don't want to make videos that I'm overly critical and like not necessarily saying as many positive things. I learned that a little bit with my Taylor Swift Evermore review. Kind of regret making that one. But you know what? It is what it is. And for that reason, Hayley Williams dropped an album last month, and I still haven't reviewed it because I was on hiatus. And I think that's a perfect example of an album that I'm glad I waited to review. I plan on reviewing it in the next month or so, because I wouldn't have had as much glowing stuff to say about it if I had just reviewed it the weekend it came out. I think having some time and space with it will allow me to give it a fairer shot. So definitely will cover Flowers for Vases, because I wasn't about to cover this Selena Gomez EP and then completely ignore that Hayley Williams project. Like, something wasn't adding up if I was going to do that. So they'll come. And then, you know, as far as like album reviews go, it's not going to be a super crazy amount because I'm actually kind of more interested in doing like tier rankings and things like that with a lot of my favorite artists, talking about and ranking their discographies and doing other kinds of videos where I talk about different albums of my life that have really impacted me. A different way to touch on music instead of doing in the traditional album review format. Because if I wanted to just individually review every album, it's just like, it's too much. It's too much for me personally. Except for a few artists that I still want to do that for, even if they're not that popular and they won't get me many views because of that. I don't care. There's one or two artists I still feel like deserve that, but that I need to do their back catalog of. But just stick along for the ride if you have, and you have stayed subscribed to me all this time. I really thank you. And you'll be seeing more videos from me coming forward. So, you know, I'm always going to be a little bit intermittent here. That's just how it's always been. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that if you're in the East Coast, you're enjoying the warm weather that we're finally starting to get. Northeast, it's like finally breaking from winter. So definitely needed, and we're starting to ease out of this pandemic slowly with the vaccine. So there's a lot of positive things in that regard to think about. And that's where I'm trying to keep my head. So we'll see how that goes. I love you all so much. See you in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.